Hey everybody, welcome to the 18th edition of Drive-Thru Review. Today we're going to be talking about Lowenherz. It was developed in 1997 by Klaus Teuber. He also developed a little-known game called Settlers of Catan. And the geek states somewhere that the ideas from Lowenherz were going to be included in Settlers of Catan. The games are totally different, I think, and I like Lowenherz a lot better. It was sort of the first, I guess you'd call it my gateway game. I'd played Settlers and Carcassonne and I don't know Risk or whatever before that, but um, there's a mechanic in this game that when I first sat down and my friend introduced it to me, this was probably 1999, so a couple years after it was released. He was describing this mechanic to me, and I'll show it to you a little bit later. And I almost wanted to start shaking him. I was like, "What? You can do what in a game, in a board game? You can do this? This is great." So, and this game has actually been remade into a game called Domain, which is probably, I don't know, 80% the same, except for this one mechanic. So obviously, Domain is horrible compared to Lowenherz, even though I've never played Domain. But I'm sure Domain's fine. But let me jump into the game. If you've never heard of it, it's really hard to find, unfortunately. I wish they'd reprint it with these rules because, personally, for me, the mechanic, and I'll highlight it when I go over the rules, is the key to the game. So let's go. Okay, so this is a setup for a four-player basic game. You can see that these tiles here are actually modular. But in the basic game, there's a specific layout, there's specific placements for your castles and your knights. And in an advanced game or a two or three player game, what you do is you'll randomize these tiles here and then take turns placing your castles and knights, similar to Catan, where you place your houses and your roads. So the objective of this game is basically to grow your area. So each player in this configuration here starts off with what's called a region. And a region is defined by these little black walls here. And the castles and knights out here are in a neutral region because there's not really any enclosure, separating them from everybody else. So the idea is to place more walls down and then grow whatever existing regions you have until you've got three regions, and then you try to invade and grow your region into other people's regions so that they are going to lose points. Now you get points for every time that you grow your region, and you lose points every time your region shrinks. You also get points for the hills inside of your region here. You can see the hills there. And also for if you have any towns inside your region, you'll get points. Now everybody's going to start with a hand of 12 ducats. You can see that there, 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 3s. That's the money they're going to start with at the beginning of the game. Everybody's going to get one of these little player aid cards. And everybody's going to get an identical hand of a 1, 2, and a 3. And these will be sort of the actions that you'll take. I'll explain that a lot more clearly in a minute. So what you're going to do to start the game is randomly determine the start player. And they get this little black castle here. Now once you've selected the start player, you're going to start the game. But everybody's really going to take their turns simultaneously. So the thing that the start player is going to do is he's going to flip over one of these cards. And in true Klaus Teuber fashion, he has these cards labeled out A, B, C, D, all the way down to E. So each of these are shuffled separately and then stacked A, B, C, D, E, F. E. Somewhere in the E cards is going to be this King is Dead card. As soon as that's drawn, the game ends. So it's going to be somewhere in the last, couple of cards here. I think there's 4. So the first player is going to draw the top A card, and it's going to have one of 3 possible actions. And I'll go over these in a minute. But I want to go over how you figure out who does these actions, because all the players have an opportunity to do these actions. And this is the mechanic that I was telling you about that I got so excited about. So what happens is we put this face up, and then each player gets to decide which action they're going to do. So, like I said before, you've got the 1, 2, and 3 card. So, starting with the first player, he has to just show everybody what he intends to do. So he may say, okay, I want to do this top action, which will give me gold. So he'll put down his number 1 card and face up. And then it'll go around in a circle. Now, in a 4-player game, you notice there's only 3 actions, and all the cards only have 3 actions. There's a special mine card, which I'll talk about in a second, which doesn't involve anybody taking any actions. So there's going to be some conflict. Not everybody's going to be able to do what they want. So let's say player 1 had a 1, player 2 chose a 2, player 3 chose a 3, so far so good. But player 4 also wanted to do action number 3. So what's going to happen is we're going to go down the action card and say, okay, who selected number 1? Okay, only one person, you get to do that action. Who selected number 2? Okay, only player 2 selected that here, so he gets to do that free and clear. We get down to action 3 and we see if there's any kind of conflict. So players 3 and 4 both selected action 3. So now they've got to have a negotiation. Okay? So, and this can take place in a manner of ways. It gives some rules. They're very simple though. Basically, player 3 can say to player 4, I'll tell you what, I'll let you take action 3, which in this case is to place 3 walls, but you got to pay me $5. Then player 4 might turn around and say, you know what, I'll give you 6 ducats if you let me take this action. So they go back and forth, back and forth. So they may come to an agreement, and they may not. If they do come to an agreement, then they have what's called a duel. So in the case of a duel, what's going to happen is both players are going to take, and they're going to put a certain number of cards in their hand, and they're going to try to be sneaky about it, because the instructions specifically say not to let them know how many cards you're holding. You could be holding 1 card or 3 or 10, and then they're both going to put them face down, and they're going to reveal them at the same time. And so I'm going to say, oh, well, I bid 5 for that. And he's going to say, guess what, I bid 7 for that. And so whoever wins that will take it. They've got to pay their ducats into the treasury here, and the losing player takes their money back, and then we go on to the next round. So the start player will shift this around to the left. Everybody takes back their action selection cards, and then the next player flips over the next A card, and then you go from there. This is the mechanic that I really, really enjoy about the game, because you've got to reveal what you want to do, and it kind of puts you in a situation where, you got to kind of show your hand, show your intentions, and then it goes around. But then the next turn, the next guy has to do it, and then you're last. So you can kind of go, oh, well, there's a free open action here, and, or maybe I want to duel this guy, I think he's out of money, or maybe I can figure out a way to negotiate with him. And this makes the game, I don't know, I'm not played every game out there, but I have never really seen this before in this manner, where it's negotiating, and it's a little bit of diplomacy, so to speak, but it's very controlled and very relevant to the objective of the game. Okay, so what are the possible actions that are going to happen on these cards? Let me just go through them here. So this top action here is the winner, or the selector of this number 1 action, will get 8 ducats. Now, if there's a conflict on an action where you receive ducats, you actually just split that with each other, because it wouldn't make sense to bid ducats to win ducats. So, and you can divide this up, and if 2 people got it, they'd each get 4 ducats. So this action here is the winner or selector will get to place 2 walls. And one thing I didn't mention before is when you're negotiating, you can't negotiate that, oh, I get to place 1 wall and you get to place 1 wall. You can't do that. You can't split up this action. Okay, so the winner of this will get to place 2 walls anywhere on the board with some restrictions. You can't go into somebody else's territory here. Let's say I wasn't gray, and then slap down 2 walls and make his territory smaller. You can, place some walls here to try to prevent, encroaching of space, or try to build another region around one of your other castles. And then this one obviously is you get to place 3 walls. So you discard that there. Okay, this action here is you get to pull a politics card. And there's 2 politics decks, and they're just shuffled so that when you go in and grab a card, your opponents can't see what you're getting. But there's a couple of different types of cards in here. The first and most simple type of card is a treasure card, and this is just a large amount of treasure. You can see this one will give you 10 ducats. This one is an alliance card, and you can actually create an alliance between your region and a bordering enemy region, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail later. This parchment is basically 3 power points, and this is basically gives you 3 points. So you can see you track your points here on this little point track. So that'll just give 3 free points. And this renegade card here, this will let you place a knight in one of your regions and also remove a knight from it has to be a neighboring region. So I'll talk a little bit more about the renegade and the alliance cards in a little bit. So the crown is lets you go fish for a politics card. This one lets you place 3 walls again. This one lets you place a knight or expand your region by 2 spaces. So let's talk about what that means. Alright, so let me show you a little bit about knights and extending your region and scoring and everything. Okay, so you can see here orange has a region here of 6 squares, while red doesn't have any kind of regions because there's nothing surrounding it. On the back of everybody's summary card, you've got your action list here on the front. On the back, it tells you how many points you get for a region. So if you have a region of 1 to 4 spaces, you get 3 points. Region of 5 to 10 spaces, 5 points, and so on. So this would be 5 points for orange. So he should be up here on the scoring track at the 5. If orange wanted to place a knight, let's say he got this action here, this bottom action, which means you can place 1 knight or expand 2 spaces. So when you place a knight, you have to place it adjacent to another knight or a castle on either an empty space or a plain or in a forest like this. If you place them in a forest, however, you have to pay 5 ducats into the bank. You can never place a knight on a hill or a town. When you go to expand by 2 spaces, you basically just count out the spaces. So you go boom, boom, and then you get the walls out, and you get to place those for free, so to speak, to enclose the region you just expanded to. So if you expanded 2 spaces here to sort of block red in, let's say, he's going to do that. He's going to get those 2 spaces, and then he just takes whatever walls he needs to surround that space. And so the points are going to go up and down as you gain and lose territory. So you're going to go up and down and lose points as the game goes on. If he had expanded into this town here and placed the walls here, let's say he got another turn where he expanded another space, he's going to 7, 8, 9, so he's still at 5 points for the total of the region, but you get an extra 5 points for each town in your region. So this is going to shoot up all the way up here to the 10. If red had won this action here to expand spaces, he could only expand upward up here. So you could go 1, 2, and then fill this in like that. So he'd get a couple more points for making his region bigger. But he could not expand into orange's territory because orange has 2 knights to red's 1 knight. Now orange, however, could expand into red's space because he's got more knights. So if he expands into red, he would want to expand here because he'll go 1, 2, like so, and then he could draw that off like so. And then he would get rid of any extraneous walls in the middle because this wall doesn't make any sense. It's not delineating any area, so that wall would disappear like that. So he would gain some more points here, and red would lose a whole bunch of points because he's back down to 2 spaces. The other action that's similar to that is the 2 shields. Now the first one is you get to place 1 knight or expand your region, one of your regions, 2 spaces. If you get the one with 2 shields, you can either place 2 knights or place a knight and expand a region 2 spaces. You can never do 2 region expands. You can't expand a region 2 spaces and then another region 2, or expand 1 4 spaces. You got to either place a knight, expand a region, or place 2 knights. So that's a nicer version of the original one. Now remember, you have these politics cards, and I mentioned I was going to talk about this before. You've got your renegade card in your alliance card. Let's talk about the renegade card. If we put this back to the way it originally was, like this, then red smartly on an earlier turn went and grabbed a renegade card because he knew orange was going to come in. He plays the renegade card, is able to place a knight legally here because it's adjacent to the castle and it's not a hill or a town, and then he can remove this knight here. So then it comes around on the next turn, then he can be the one to invade. Or if he hadn't gotten a renegade card, but instead he had gotten an alliance card, then what he can do is he can play an alliance between him and his neighbor. And the way that you do that to signify is you just turn one of these walls sideways like that. So this means that neither one of them is allowed to invade each other. So they're kind of like locked. They're locked in. They can't move any further. Now there's a way to break the alliance by either player's choice. They can, at any time during their turn, they can pay 10 gold or 10 ducats to the ducat bank and break the alliance. Now I mentioned the silver mine cards earlier. When these come up, nobody takes an action, but everybody scores 1 point for each hill in their region. And that event will also happen when you draw the King is Dead card. Everybody scores 1 point for all their hills, and then the game's over. So these hills are vital, and these towns are obviously vital. So you get a lot of nice interaction here of people going, trying to go to the towns and the hills, and there's a lot of little, wars because of that. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the overview. Like I said before, I haven't really seen a game where the negotiations happen in such a strict way. You draw a card, you get 3 actions, so you say, okay, which one do I really want to do? Which one do I think I can get away with doing? Can I try to get some money out of somebody? There's a lot of strategy and depth just in that whole mechanic of the game. And another aspect of that is the politics cards. You go in, but they're sorted in such a way that nobody's going to know what you went for, and it's not random, which would be ridiculous. And I'm surprised they didn't make it random because that'd be the common approach. It's like, make it random, and they get whatever, and then they have to base their strategy around the randomness. But they took that extra step to say, okay, we'll put it in 2 random piles, so they can dig through the piles, and then grab a card, and then the piles are random, so nobody's going to know what they took. So they don't know if they're going for an alliance approach, if they're going for by total number of knights, that kind of thing. Maybe they're going to collect money. The other thing about the game that I didn't mention before is in a 2 and a 3 player game, the first player who has the black castle in front of them, instead of just laying down 1 card, they have to lay down 2 cards. So it's possible that they would do either or none of their actions. So they could get away with doing 2 actions on a turn, but it's also possible that he could not have any of their actions because the other 2 players may take one and one may take the other. So the game is really designed to enforce that level of interaction. Now in a 2-player game, it's probably its weakest point because you could have turns, I don't know how many multiples of turns, where everybody kind of does whatever they want, but that's really on the player at that point, I think. So I think it's okay. I've never played it with 2, only with 3 and 4. So it seems like it would be okay with 2, but like I said, with 4, that's where it's at its best. And anyway, surprised there isn't a video at the time of this making of a video. This was my gateway game, blah blah blah. If you got some extra money, you can find it. Finding it in a good condition is one thing. So it's not exorbitantly expensive, but anyway, I think it's really good, and I haven't really seen that mechanic, with negotiations or anything like that, that strict and that sort of streamlined. Anyway, thank you.